Um, so we're back. We had a nice few sessions. We've been on here since 10 o'clock, and here we are, 3 a.m. Thank you for joining me, you late night, early morning warriors. I do want to cover some more astrology and some current events. I think that's important. But before I get back into the astrology, I want to cover, since Trump seems to be the main thing, I want to cover this Super Bowl because I think this Super Bowl, like most things, are very symbolic. I personally think that the NFL is rigged and planned in advance. But aside from that, I want to look at the symbols and the symbology of the Super Bowl. We have the New England Patriots versus the Philadelphia Eagles. And I say it's rigged because I remember when the Patriots first won the Super Bowl 2001, and I remember across the TV screen, all I was seeing was the American flag, and they just kept talking about 9/11. And I was like, okay, I get it. 9/11 just happened a few months before. But it seems that the whole hour, hour and a half after the Super Bowl was over, they just kept showing the flag and mentioning 9/11. And that's when something hit me, was like, wait a minute. You know what I mean? It's almost as if this was planned in advance. So since then, I've been tracking sports, the possibility that it's rigged, symbols, halftime shows, rituals, things of that nature. So this Super Bowl, I thought it was very symbolic to have the Patriots and the Eagles because um, the Patriots is obvious. If you're American, you're a patriot, you love this country, that's what you're called. But Philadelphia has a special history with America because the very first stock exchange was in Philadelphia. And the first Continental Congress was also in Philadelphia. So if you look at that, Philadelphia was really the first capital of the United States, if you want to look at it like that in terms of what it represented, even before Washington, D.C. So the real capital historically of this country is Philly. So when you talk about the Pennsylvania, exactly.
Commonwealth, known as the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania.
And you know what's ironic is that New England, Massachusetts is a commonwealth.
13, you had 13 Commonwealth colonies.
Right, exactly. So when you look at this Super Bowl, this isn't. Huh? You can chime in if you want. Yeah. If you look at the symbols, this Super Bowl represents old America and current America. And if you look at Donald Trump, that's basically has been the biggest distinction that he's made, and that's been the biggest problem with him, is that in him saying he wants to make America great again, he's basically saying that he wants to return back to old America. And old America is really the Philadelphia Eagles, right? They represent old time America, a time when slavery was legal, a time when you didn't have as much immigration. So it represented America in its infancy. That's the great again. And the Patriots, they represent modern day Americans, modern day patriotism. So with this whole theme of taking the knee and Black Lives Matter and, basically protesting the NFL due to some kind of civil rights gesture, the fact that this Super Bowl has two American teams is kind of symbolic of an American Civil War being played out on the football field. So I thought that was very interesting to note. So watching this Super Bowl, I wouldn't be surprised if you've seen a lot of American themes. Um, and also what's ironic is that eagle is also a symbol of Donald Trump because Donald Trump is part of um, a basic club, or I don't want to say secret society, but he's part of a group of individuals, the Society of Eagles, I believe is called. And if you Google, you'll see Trump with an eagle. So the eagle symbolism with Trump is also telling. So this Super Bowl is a reflection of what's going on in this country, and how it's divided and how it's a tug of war between what America was and what people want America to be. So I definitely suggest taking a look at the halftime show and take a look at the commercials and the Super Bowl as a whole and see what kind of American patriotism themes is promoted. So I just wanted to put that out there. And with that said, I also want to get back to some astrology and kind of give people a basic blueprint of how to approach astrology. Earlier, we talked about Jesus and Lucifer and the Bible. But what most people aren't aware of is that the Bible, not just the Bible, but Islam and Quran and the Torah, the Talmud, Judaism, all these things are books that are astrological, theological, cosmogony manuals for human beings and how they interact with the solar system and their environment. Plain and simple. These characters in these books did not exist, but they represent lessons and themes that human beings have noticed and marked throughout time so they can have an understanding of their world and their universe. For instance, they say that Jesus died at the place of the skull, and that he died at Golgotha. That's the location that is said that Jesus was crucified at, was Golgotha. And if you look at the translation of Golgotha, Golgotha means place of the skull. And right there, people take these things to mean literal, but the Bible and all these religious books, these are mythological stories, figures to kind of give a glimpse and teach what the human body is about and how human beings interact with their environment. So the example I gave with Jesus dying at Golgotha, that right there represents a body process. It's not something that actually happened. It's a alchemical process that happens in the body. So when you channel your energy in what's called the kundalini, right? So what's the kundalini? It's basically energy that's reserved in us, okay? And when you channel this energy up for males, it's the energy that's in you, the sexual energy is stored in your testicles. And when you store this energy, it's there. It's like a cold storage. What happens was the ancients knew how to channel this energy up from that area into their brain. And they used that energy for higher purposes. So when you hear Jesus being crucified at Golgotha, that's nothing but a chemical process that your body goes through when you change the energy from one part of your body to a higher part of your body. And if you look at when that happens, it goes from your root chakra to the base of your spine. You channel the energy up from your testicles, and it goes up to your spine. As it goes up to each part of your spine, the energy changes from cold storage and being just latent power, and it heats up. And as it goes through each part of your spinal cord, it gets hotter and hotter, and the energy gets more intense. And there's a part of the back of your body that the top of your spine meets your cranium, the back of your cranium, and it forms a cross. And when it crosses over from your spine to your skull, that's the crucifixion. That's your original energy in your base of your body crossing over into your head and your skull, the place of the skull. And that crucifixion represents changing one energy to another. So that's just an example of how the stories in the Bible, the figures in the Bible, if you look at the root meaning of these people, Abraham, Solomon, all of these have a root etymological meaning. And when you trace these meanings back, you'll see that these names actually mean either food, person, places, or some part of the cosmos, period. So when you look at that and you look at the root meaning of these names in this book and the places, you'll see that this is nothing but an understanding of the human body. A good book I suggest to get more understanding of that is called Zodiac and the Cell Salts of Salvation. That's Zodiac and the Cell Salts of Salvation. And that book explains to you how each sign and its relation to Judaism and Christianity, how the names actually meant something completely different, and they weren't actual figures, but they were actually meanings to represent body processes that you go through during different times of the year. So when you take astrology, right, the whole book, Holy Bible, translates in the Greek, Helios Biblos, or Latin, and that means the sun book, right? So that book is an astrological book. And when they say the Son of God, and I'm just laying this down before I get into the astrology again, the Son of God is really the S-U-N of God, the Son. Because the Son, if you think about it, it does the same thing that is attributed to Jesus, right? The Son is the life giver, right? It is the father of this universe, right? It gets rid of darkness with sunrise. It constantly battles with darkness and sunset. So these stories are myths, but these myths are teaching tools. But what happened was when individuals that was outside of these original cultures came in, they didn't have an understanding of these practices, and they realized that these practices empowered the people that practiced them with high knowledge to the point to where they were rulers. So if you wanted to enslave a people, you have to strip away their customs that made them great. So that's why now we follow these traditions and these religions. It's a political practice as opposed to a spiritual practice. We make it a spiritual practice, especially if you're black, because we're just a spiritual people. But so with that said, I just want to give a basic context to astrology. Then I'm going to turn it to what's fast becoming my favorite Aquarius next to me. But the Zodiac is basically lessons, like I said earlier, right? And these are lessons to help you understand your journey and your journey only and your relationship to planet Earth and the rest of the celestial bodies, period. When you're born, a clock is set. Well, a clock is set when you're conceived. Well, yeah, a clock is set when you're conceived. But when you're actually born into this planet Earth, you have a movement that nobody else on this planet has. Nobody. Even if you're a twin, you're still seconds or minutes away, which makes you different. No one has the same fingerprints, right? So everyone is different in that way. Because of that, you move to a certain rhythm. And that rhythm is what makes you you, period. All astrology does, it shows your relationship and your rhythm as you grow and get older and as the planets change and what is inside of you, and because of history and cyclical habits and practices and events, what occurs when you're born during a certain time. Plain and simple. So your birth chart, your astrological chart, shows energies that's native to you and how those energies are affected as you live on this planet Earth and as the planets change. Now, these effects happen because we are star beings, right? We're children of stardust. So we come from what we look out in the sky and see. That's us. We're stars.
By the universe.
By the universe. So therefore, we're affected by the universe. Astrology shows that effects on a regular basis. And with that, I'm going to just give a brief rundown. Traditionally, there's 12 signs, right? 12 represents a cycle. 13 represents what comes after that cycle is finished. Each sign of the zodiac represents a different energy, and it's also symbolically represented by attributes in nature and attributes to the human body. So physically, the physical zodiac goes from Aries to Pisces. Spiritually, it goes from Pisces to Aries, right? So Aries represents the head, and Aries also represents the beginning. If you look at when Aries comes, March 21st, that is vernal equinox, right? It says that that's when the sun passes through the equator, right? So that represents new beginnings. And that means that Aries energy represents new ventures and being a pioneer. That goes to what Mr. Harrison was saying about faith. Because when you do something, you might not have all the answers, but there's just something in you that's like, I need to do this.
Vision is a vision that you, it's inculcation of vision of some form of success. It's going towards a moment of achievement, successful achievement.
So, and that's what Aries represents, the beginning of potential successful beginnings and achievements. That beginning initial journey where you don't have all the facts, you just go ahead. So Aries energy represents just doing. I do. That's just their mantra. You know what I mean? Aries is the ram. I'm not gonna get too far into the symbology. I'm just laying the basics down. So Aries begins the mission of life. So in your life, when you're beginning something, you're in your Aries phase. You're in your pioneer phase. Aries is the astrological first lesson that you learn on this planet, is that you're just gonna have to do stuff even when you don't know. But on the way, you gather the information. So Aries also represents the head, and they represent reading and studying. Because when you begin a journey, you have to gather information. So Aries represents reading and studying, and they also represent ignorance, because they don't know a lot of things because they just started the journey. So if you're having trouble with people that are ignorant, I suggest you hang around some Aries so you can kind of understand and watch how they deal with people and how they deal with ignorance. And you'll kind of see or get a good grasp on how to deal with people that you might feel are ignorant. If you're a college student and you're having trouble with your work, I suggest you hang around Aries, and then you'll see the best way to study. And I attempted this when I was in college, and it worked wonders. After you got Aries, you start the mission, you begin your journey, but you realize that you need some materials because you're out there naked. You're just going out there, starting the mission, and you know, you don't have anything. So the next lesson in life is, how do you get the materials and the resources you need to keep your journey going? And that comes Taurus, second sign of the physical zodiac. Taurus represents money and materials. Taurus gathers the materials. They're an earth sign. Aries is a fire sign. So Taurus takes the mission started by Aries and says, okay, we started this journey. Now I need to gather materials if I'm going to keep going. So Taurus energy represents luxury. It represents gathering of materials and resources, and it represents a form of work. Work for the purpose of making the journey more comfortable and making the journey something that's steady. That's what Taurus represent. They rule the throat and the neck. And if you look at the neck keeps things short and brief. So a Taurus goes to work and they come back. They like to get what they're going, do their work, and finish. They don't like any distractions in the meantime. And if you look at the throat, when you eat your food, what happens if the food doesn't go down how it's supposed to? You choke, and you start choking in the throat. So that's symbolic that Taurus represents no distractions. Okay? Start the work, finish the work. Nothing in between. So that's the second lesson of life. You know, gather the resources, set out to what you have to do, and finish with no distractions. Taurus is not about distractions or arguing. So now that you started the journey in Aries, this is like a little story of the Zodiac to kind of help people get familiar with it. You started the journey with Aries, right? You pioneered. You're going out there naked, no knowledge, but you have to gather the information. Then you realize you need the materials. So now Taurus comes into play to gather the resources and put that work in. Then now you started the mission, you got the resources, but you realize that you're still all alone and that you need help, because the mission that you are setting out to embark on might actually have to involve other things outside of yourself. So therefore, you have to learn how to communicate outside of yourself. So the third lesson, third sign in the zodiac, the first human sign in the zodiac, because Taurus represents the bull. So if Aries is the ram, Taurus is the bull, you're just going off pure, raw animal instinct. You have a goal, you have a mission, go out there, get materials. So to do that, you don't actually have to have any human attributes. It's just like when you work a job. You get the task, you do the task. That's it. You have an idea, it's an idea. There's really nothing human that comes into play. That's when Gemini comes in. It's the third sign of the zodiac. Gemini rules the nervous system and the arms. And they're the first human sign in the zodiac, the twins. So therefore, now the lesson of life is, how do you communicate with people outside of yourself, right? You know you, but you don't know this other person. And in order to keep getting your resources and expand and continue on your journey, you have to learn how to communicate with other individuals. That's where Gemini comes in. So Gemini rules communication. They're the lowest sign in the zodiac. They see the lowest and the highest. So that means that Gemini thinking is the lowest. They think negative first. Why? Because they have that nervous energy, and they deal with the three lower centers of the brain: security, indecision, and things of that nature, and doubt and worry. So Gemini is always thinking of what can go wrong so they can protect themselves and have a backup. And when they communicate with people, Gemini energy represents logic. So logic is the name of the game. So now you understand how to put things in its proper perspective without being too emotional about it, because we haven't even gotten to emotions yet. So Gemini represents communication, represents logic. You take the materials that's gathered in Taurus, and now you branch it out, just like the arms or the nervous system branches out, and you communicate where these resources need to go. Okay, let's put it here, let's put it there. This is what we need in order to do this. Let's trade this, let's trade that. So that's why Gemini also represents contracts. If you have an issue with your paperwork or your contracts, that means that you are lacking in Gemini energy. That means that there's some fine print that you didn't read, you wasn't logical enough, or you let somebody run game on you through their words to the point to where you suffered contractually. So if you're having trouble with your paperwork, if you're having trouble with contracts, if you're having trouble with overall agreements, and you just don't know how to structure them, I suggest you hang around Geminis. Watch how they talk, watch how they operate, and then you'll learn how to structure your contracts better, because you'll see that Geminis understand the word. In the beginning was the word. And once you get that down, you'll start to structure your paperwork a little bit different. So now that we got the communication out the way, we know how to trade and structure and make contracts for the resources that was gathered through Taurus, through Gemini, and the mission started by Aries. At this point in the journey of life, you start to become a little bit more cold now, because now you're realizing that you have to protect your interests. You're realizing that you have to gather your resources, and you're all alone. So that could kind of make you cold-hearted. And you realize that you actually need people that you can trust, right? So that's where the fourth sign of the zodiac comes in, and that's Cancer. Cancer represents family, right? So family are those people that you trust. When you're building something and you're going out in the world and you're making your way, right? You started your mission by Aries. You gathered your resources by Taurus. You've communicated what you need and protected your interests and dispersed your resources through Gemini. Now you actually need people that you could depend on. In case you miss something, you got people around you that can cover your back and kind of offer that kind of security while you're out there doing what you set out to do. And that's what Cancer represents. Cancer represents that familiarity, right? Cancer's symbol is the crab, and they rule the spleen, and they rule the breast. If you look at the spleen is very crucial in producing blood cells and things of that nature, which is also crucial in helping you with your immune system. So Cancers also provide immunity, internal immunity, that kind of confidence and security that you get from family in order to go out in the world and do what you have to do, right? And the breasts are nurturing body parts. They give life through food, natural food. They stimulate the brain, and it also increases the bonding between child and mother. So Cancer represents as the mother influence. They represent that security. They represent that nurturing, that life-giving principle. And Cancer also represents tenacity, meaning that they don't let go, they don't stop. When they set out for something, right, they keep at it. It's all about the mission. So that's the lesson that's learned through Cancer, is providing security, not letting go of the mission. And they also represent mass communication, and they rule humor along with Sagittarius. So a lot of your comedians like Robin Williams, Bill Cosby, a lot of Cancers, even Charlemagne the God, 50 Cent, these individuals are naturally funny because Cancer also represents, along with security, that need to feel good. So Cancer represents humor, and they also represent mass communication. That's why if you look at George Bush, he's a Cancer. He could say the dumbest things, but he makes you feel secure. Weapons of mass destruction. Iraq are terrorists. If somehow you felt like he was right. That's the power of Cancer, because they also deal with mass communication. So now, once you get through that security issue, you've established your resources through Taurus, you started the mission through Aries, you know how to communicate and protect your interests through contracts in Gemini, you have people you could trust, and family, and you establish that security. Now, you have to start establishing your position in the world amongst other people doing the same thing as you. So now you have to kind of get into the power game, and right, you have to kind of make yourself known. And that's where Leo comes in, right? Leo's represented by the sun. Leo also represents children, right? They're the kings and queens of the Zodiac. They also represent, on one aspect, the ego. So when you look at Leo, the Leo lesson now is to establish your firm position in your environment as a place of respect, so people won't come try to take it or show disrespect to what you are attempting to create. So that's what Leo represents. Leos deal with appreciation, right? They deal with ego, and they also deal with the heart. And if you look at the heart gives, it pumps blood, and blood is the energy carrier, right? Carries oxygen to the rest of the cells in the body. So Leo represents giving other people shine, just like the sun. The sun shines on everybody. So when you're around Leos, the lesson of Leo, the Leo energy that you use, is how to nurture, not nurture, because Cancer deals with nurturing, but Leo, it's a form of nurturing, but Leo represents uplifting. Leo know how to put esteem into people that don't have esteem or has low self-esteem. That's what the sun does. When it's a cloudy day, people feel weak. They feel gloomy. But when the sun is out, they feel energized. They feel happy. It's a mood changer. That's Leo. Leos are the mood changers, the mood setters. They know how to make people have high self-esteem. They can also make people have low self-esteem. So therefore, they are the confidence builders and the confidence destroyers. So the lesson that we learn from Leo is, even though we have a family now, we're making something, you have to have some kind of high self-esteem or confidence in order to keep that down so nobody can take that from you. So you have to kind of establish a kingdom within your own self and with what you're creating to show people that it's not going to be easy to knock this down, what I've built. And that's what Leos represent, representing that sign like the sun that will scorch you if you get too close. Okay? So now that you've established your throne and you're saying that you're here, this is what I'm building, this is what I've gathered, you know, and I have no problem helping you do that and elevating you, you have the Virgo. Now, this is the last sign that represents the individual. The first 6 signs of the zodiac represents the individual. The last 6 signs represents external, the world. That's why the first 6 signs deal more with the eye. Aries, Taurus, Gemini, Cancer, Leo, Virgo. They deal with the individual. Libra, Scorpio, Sagittarius, Capricorn, Aquarius, Pisces. They're more the worldly type of signs. They deal more with the world and the community and the people. You know, it's not so much about them as it is about the world. But anyway, in terms of Virgo, now that we learn the power of self-esteem and establishing the kingship and helping other people feel confident, Virgo represents, okay, we still have work to do in service. If I'm going to get to where I'm going, I need to help others do that. And that's where Virgo comes in. Virgo represents help. They're the sign of help. They're the sign of work. They're the sign of selfish. Virgo's a very selfish sign. When I say selfish, I'm not just talking about negative, because there's negative and there's positive, right? So although they represent service, they're also very selfish because they're the sign of discrimination. They rule the intestines and the digestive system. And if you look at the digestive system, what does the digestive system do? The digestive system does this. When you eat food, you chew it, you know, goes down into your stomach and your digestions. The body says, okay, I have to take what I need and get rid of what I don't need. So the metabolism, right. So the Virgos are the metabolizers of the zodiac. So anytime you're dealing with Virgo energy, and you could use these energies, you don't have to be that sign. Like you could be a Gemini or an Aquarius, and you can actually use other signs to help better your life. Like Virgos deal with discrimination. So if you're a type of person, like let's say a Pisces, that's always supporting other people and you're not getting it back, you might need to learn from your opposite sign, Virgo, and be more discriminate, because the body's selfish, right? People think selfishness is negative. No, there's positive selfishness and there's negative selfishness. If you drink Clorox, right, wouldn't you want your body to be selfish and throw it back up to save your life? Or would you want it to be passive and non-discriminate, swallow it, not throw it up, and you die? So that's an example of how being selfish can save your life. So selfishness can be positive or negative. Virgo deals with both. It deals with that discrimination, just like the body. You eat your food, it takes the nutrients, gets rid of through the anus or through pores or through your mouth what you don't need. That's Virgo, plain and simple. That's why they're cold. That's why they're the sign of isolation and the sign of reclusiveness, is because sometimes in order for you to know who or what is good for you, you need to spend time alone. And that's what Virgo represents. That's why their symbol is the Virgin, purity. And they also represent approaching the harvest. That's why if you look at the months of August and September, that's prime harvest time, right? It's the hottest month of the year, right? And it's the time in which you're going to start bearing these fruits. These harvests is coming about. So Virgo has no time to play around. So they have the longest concentration in the zodiac because they have to prepare for this harvest. Okay? So when you're dealing with Virgos, you're dealing with an analytical, discriminative, reclusive, but they also co-rule communication with Gemini. They know how to communicate. So if you approach them with that logic, you approach them with what makes sense, and if you have something to offer, you'll have great time with Virgo. If not, then you will definitely feel their wrath. So once you learn discrimination and service, the next lesson is, how do you balance all of these things you have going on in your life? Because these things have a tendency to produce a person that can swing too far right or too far left in any given area. You can get so comfortable through Taurus that you gather too much materials. That's why sometimes Tauruses can be, through all that hard work, create so much luxury for themselves they can be lazy. A Gemini could be so much into words and contracts that they might run cons on people. That's why they're one of the 3 most deceptive signs in the zodiac. So through Libra, you learn balance, right? And Libra, um, Virgo is also the second human sign of the zodiac after Gemini. But through Libra, they represent the scales, they represent balance, but they also rule the kidneys, right? And the kidneys are the filterers. So if you do too much, it overwhelms the kidneys and it causes problems, right? So the kidneys get rid of the toxins, they filter the water. Um, they're a very organized set of organs that deal a lot with detoxification. So in order to be fair, you have to you cannot get involved in the poisons, so to say, like the kidneys. All you have to do is filter the what's needed and what's not needed. And in order to do that, in order for the kidneys to do that, they have to constantly be in a position where they don't swing too far or get overwhelmed. So they cannot afford to pick sides. And that's what Libra represents. They're also the hardest working sign in the zodiac. The second is Virgo, because the kidneys is always filtering, right? They're always cleaning out the body. So when you're dealing with that sign, you're dealing with a sign that doesn't really have time to joke around. You're dealing with it. They also deal with relating, art, and beauty. So when you're dealing with a Libra, they deal with taste, refinement. So when you're dealing with them, you're now learning that through all your mission, you have to appreciate the beauty in life. All that hard work, all of the things that you gathered, Libra takes all that and it makes you stop and smell the roses. So now that we've got through the first 7 signs, this is when things get a little bit more intense. Because once you've learned balance, the problem with balance and justice is that it doesn't make any waves, right? It doesn't really, you're not challenged. The biggest challenge so far has really been the gathering the resources. But you really haven't created anything. All you're doing is just doing something that's still for yourself. So this is where Scorpio comes into play. Scorpio represents the dark side of the journey, okay? Scorpio represents quite a few things. It has the most symbols, right? It has the dove, has the serpent. It has the dove, serpent, and the scorpion. And the scorpion stings itself.
Dangerous.
Very dangerous.
Yeah.
Scorpio is the most powerful sign in the zodiac.
And the dove is supposed to be a piece for peace.
What's that? The dove?
The dove is supposed to be for peace.
And the dove. And you see that? They go from scorpion to dove. Very conflicting. That's a good point. They represent the see? And in order to get to the dove, you got to get to the dark side because
Hell of a swing.
yeah, that's a big drastic.
The snake is the most dangerous. And that's the scorpion represents the asp, and it represents the bird. A dove is always sent out for peace.
Yes.
So it's a hell of a you see that scorpion? The woman I got married to the scorpion.
Yeah. She's
And
Scorpio.
the one who I supposed to scorpion.
Scorpio. Oh, so there must be
Jesus
certain
Christ, man.
time. Well, yeah, I mean
Dangerous. The most I know for your love to but
you're a
don't
tough
be-
cookie then.
Oh,
If you attract all those Scorpios, that means you a tough cookie.
That's what they use. They use the woman to trap me.
See?
They use the woman to trap me. And the Aquarius always have get themselves in trouble,
Aquarius, because it's interesting because Scorpio was one of your brother sister signs. They're both fixed signs, so those are both fixed placements.
Most them dangerous, man.
The fixed placements are.
Smiling with you, but them killing you. See, them smiling with you and them stabbing you. See,
They stab see, Scorpios is a water sign, and the water signs they were nurturing, but the Scorpio nurtures differently. They nurture through pain. They find your weakness
it, yeah.
and they exploit it,
Yeah.
or they keep poking at it, because Scorpio, the Scorpio lesson represents the weakness that you have can hurt you.
Yeah.
So what Scorpios do is they know how to see power. They identify power instantly. They identify strength and weakness instantly. So they know who's powerful. They know who's less powerful. And with that, they take that and they use it to their advantage.
Yeah.
And if they care about you, and they in their own way, they use that to make you better. But sometimes that could be painful.
Yeah. They can give and get, or they can take.
Yes, definitely. And it's ironic because Scorpio is the opposite or polar sign of Taurus. So if Taurus represents material things, Scorpio represents the other side, the dark side of material things, the maintenance of it. See, Taurus just gathers it, but they'll use it for personal luxury. Scorpio takes the materials that's gathered and they actually establish a plan for it. That's why Scorpios represent inheritances. So if you have a problem with inheritances or things of that nature, then you might have a Scorpio energy that you're lacking. So if you have something that's owed to you in the form of an inheritance or in form of material things or property, you might be lacking some sort of power in a certain area, and you might need to make an alliance with people that have power, because that's what Scorpio represents. They represent inheritances, and they also rule crime and punishment. So, anytime that you are facing some kind of punishment, or if you commit a crime, you're using Scorpio energy. Plain and simple. Plain and simple. So that's what Scorpio represents. It represents you getting in touch with the darker aspects of yourself so you can constantly give birth to yourself and not stay stagnant. And sometimes you either sting yourself or get stung by someone else. And that's what Scorpio represents. Well, again, there's a lot more to these, but this is just a brief run through. I kind of wanted to tell it in like a semi-story form of a person on a journey, so you could see the lessons that a person goes through when they embark on a mission. So once you've went through the dark side, Scorpios also represent the investigators. So if you have Scorpio in your chart, you naturally know how to dig deep and investigate. And that means that you'll go to the darkest places. You're built to go through the filthiest, dirtiest areas in order to pull out the information that you want. And that's what Scorpios represent. They show the beauty that we learn to see through Libra, and its cleanliness and its excellent aura. Scorpio shows you that, wait a minute, beauty is not just in these little pure things that you think is just beauty. You could find beauty in the ugly. You could find beauty in the dark and the nasty. That's why they rule sex. So Scorpio lesson is to show you how to find beauty in the most ugliest, darkest of experiences and places. That's what Scorpio also represents. Then you got Sagittarius. Through all of this journey that we have from Aries to Scorpio, we still have not addressed. We may have addressed it a little bit through Libra, but Libra is a detached form of justice. It's like the courts. They look at the law, period. That's Libra. They don't really have time to get into you emotionally or things of that nature. Fairness. The law is not fair. The law just is. That's that. You don't get into the fair side of justice or the law until you get into Sagittarius. Sagittarius says, well, things aren't just about the law. Sometimes the law is unfair. So with Sagittarius, we have the lesson of fairness and deeper study. It's the opposite sign of Gemini. Gemini deal with logic, but they also deal with superficial knowledge. Sagittarius, it takes the principles of life and it makes it worthwhile. So it says, okay, Scorpio, I see you are dark sign and, you're teaching lessons through this kind of pain. But Sagittarius says, okay, we can learn lessons by having enjoyment. Sagittarius rules food and drink, and they deal with expansion. They like big things. So Sagittarian lesson is that you can actually learn in life and enjoy yourself. It doesn't have to be a painful process. And the saying life is not fair, Sagittarius says, wait a minute, fairness does exist in life. So anytime you find yourself saying that life is not fair, you might need to surround yourself with Sagittarians and use that energy. If you can't surround yourself with them and you feel life is not fair, then you might need to use the Sagittarian energy and start enjoying yourself and start setting principles and boundaries, because Sagittarius is the sign of principles. So once you establish principles for yourself, a sort of constitution, then you'll start to see that it's not about life being fair, it's about you establishing fairness for yourself. So whoever you meet will automatically know how to approach you. And if they know that you operate a certain way, they won't come at you like that, because Sagittarius also represents point proving, and they also represent competition, right? And truth telling. So if someone's coming at you in a way that doesn't fit your truth, then Sagittarius, as outspoken as they are, you'll let them know. So Sagittarius represents you setting down the guidelines of fairness and principles. And they're very sarcastic, most sarcastic sign in the Zodiac. And they also rule humor and comedy, just like Cancer, like Richard Pryor, Monique, Jay-Z, DMX. These are all comics. They're funny in their own right. That's Sagittarian energy. So now that, and they also represent freedom. Sagittarians represent freedom. Them and Aquariuses represent freedom and liberation. No restrictions. In that, we learn freedom, we learn fairness, we learn principles. We come to the sign of Capricorn, right? So we get to this point of man's lesson from Aries until Capricorn, where now we learn that we have to be more disciplined. We've had fun during Sagittarius, food and drink. We've been excessive, because Sagittarian is a sign of excess. Now we have to buckle down. Now we have to deal with the fact that life is just going to restrict us. We're prisoners of time, because we have to do things according to a clock. We have schedules and cycles and deadlines. So Capricorn energy represents removing your emotions of you not wanting to meet these deadlines and these obligations, and building for what you set out to build, even if you don't like it. Saturn rules Capricorn. And in the ancient times, Saturn was the primary celestial being. Saturn was the planet of people of melanin that we call black people. That's why you go to court and you see these judges wear black. That's paying homage to Saturn, right? So Saturn is a deep planet, and Capricorn is deep. That's why one of their metaphysical signs is the devil, because Saturn in mythology, because of the three Abrahamic religions and how they turned everything upside down, they made Saturn the devil and evil, because time was their enemy, and they viewed restrictions as something that was negative. They didn't understand the freedom that lies in restrictions. So through mythology and these religions, Capricorn became the devil, because Saturn rules time. That's why it's called Father Time. And restrictions is ruled by Capricorn. Capricorn rules the skeletal system. If you look at the skeletal system offers structure. Without the skeletal system, you wouldn't even be human, because you'd just be a slab of meat laying flat on the floor. It's Capricorn, or the skeletal system, that gives you an upright position that distinguishes you between any other living organism. So Capricorn represents structure. They also rule the bones, the teeth. So in order to maintain these things wear down over time. So you have to understand how to do things in stages. Capricorns are the builders. They do things according to time frames and stages. So they map out how much time each action is going to take in order to finish it. And that's what we get through Capricorn, is how to do things in time and not do things out of the wrong time and out of order. So Capricorn lies between Sagittarius and Aquarius. So Capricorn teaches a lesson that we didn't learn at Sagittarius, is that if you go too far and too excessive, you actually run the risk of gambling away the things you work hard for. So Capricorn takes that and says, all right, let's slow it down and let's take our time. However, you can become too burdened with responsibility to the point where you become cold, like the planet Saturn, calculating and unfeeling. That's why they have the opposite sign of Cancer, which is a feeling sign. Capricorn is not feeling because they're all about the responsibility. We don't have time to feel, we just have time to build. And we're going to do things according to this structure, whether you like it or not. But that's why we have Aquarius. Aquarius comes in and says, you know what? We've been going with this structure way too long. This isn't working. And we're just doing this because we felt it worked in the past, and it's time for a change. So what we're going to do is, since we've been so used to this Capricorn thing and this long journey that we did since Aries, Aquarius comes in and says, you know what? We're going to do something that completely doesn't make any sense to any of you, because we need something completely new, something that's not controlled by anyone. So Aquarians are the liberators. They are the ones that take humanity and liberates them from their chains. So if you're under any kind of dogma, if you have any issues regarding sexual practices or any kind of traditions that's been placed upon you by others because of that Capricorn energy, Aquarian says, why are we doing this? This is not working. So what? It's tradition. If this tradition isn't serving us, we need to tear it down. And Aquarians rule hostility. If you ever dealt with an Aquarian, they go from 0 to 60, and you're like, what happened? Okay? So Aquarians is a sign that rules hostility, and they tear down outworn ideas. If you have an idea that you're holding on to because you're familiar with it and it's killing you, Aquarian energy destroys that, and destroys it violently. And it disrupts it with vengeance. So that's what Aquarians represent. They're the liberators. And they also represent humanity. That's why their symbol is the water bearer. They themselves aren't an emotional sign. They're just meant to show you communal compassion. And when you put emotions and you spread it across a community, or you spread it across the masses, it transforms from emotional to liberation. Emotions are really a personal thing. It's interpersonal. Aquarians is not an interpersonal sign. They're a detached sign. Cold logic, scientists. They show their emotions and their compassion across a wide range of people by doing humanitarian efforts, because they have a genuine love for humanity and the principle of humanity. So, we started this long mission by ourselves through Aries with nothing. Now we have come and we've gathered our resources. We've built our family, our kingdom. We've done the work. We've helped others. We've established a law for ourselves through Libra, right? We've been through the dark side, and, we've had our sexual exploits and lessons through Scorpio. We've had our entertainment and our enjoyment, our freedom through Sagittarius. We finally built what we set out to build, and we're giving what we built through all of that, through the signs in Capricorn, and Aquarius is offering what we built to the masses so they can see freedom for themselves. And after we've done all that through Aquarius, giving it to the masses, what we work hard to build, we come to the final sign of the Zodiac, which is Pisces. Pisces says, we've done all this, now the world has it, and I don't even want credit for it, because this was a spiritual thing. We did all of this just to show you what's possible, and that the spirit runs through you, and this is what the potential is that's in you, and once you realize it, you'll change your life. And Pisces takes all of that, and it shows you, I'm just going to give it to you. All of that work you did, Pisces reflects, the spiritual aspects of that. It makes you look at what it took for that to happen. It makes you realize that all of that was all in you all along. You just had to go through it to see it. And that's why you look at Pisces. Pisces represents, it's the most spiritual sign naturally in the zodiac. They represent the feet. And if you look at the feet, I know I said the skeletal system offers structure and support for the whole body, but even if you have a skeletal system with the bones and you're upright, without those feet, you still wind up collapsing on the floor. This time it's not just flesh, it's flesh and bones. So the true energy of support is Pisces. And the feet is normally neglected. Most people don't take care of their feet. They don't massage their feet. They don't get massaged. They don't soak their feet. They just can't. They only make their feet look good, right? That's why Pisces represents the unconscious. And if you look at your feet, they're mostly covered. That means that it doesn't have a conscious. It's covered all the time, and it just goes where the brain says it goes. That's what Pisces does. It's the unconscious mind. So that means that there's things motivating you that you're not even aware of because you're only going off of your conscious and what you think. But if you take time out and think about it, what drives you is the subconscious and the unconscious, which is Pisces. And once you start tapping into the Pisces aspect and the unconscious, you start to see that a lot of the things you do, you don't know why you did it. You're just like a slave. So Pisces energy is there to make you see really the essence of what motivates you. But they also represent illusions for that reason. Pisces is one of the three most deceptive signs. It's Pisces, Scorpio, Gemini. Pisces deal with illusions because they don't come off as they are. You know what I mean? Because spirituality is something that has to be sought. You went through this whole journey of Aries to get to Pisces, but you didn't know all of that whole journey. You had to go through it physically, but all along that was inside of you. And had you realized all of those lessons was inside of you to begin with, you wouldn't have to go through that journey. So Pisces represents the long physical endurance that we go through is already inside you, and that the real journey of the lessons isn't what you go through experience necessarily. It's discovering what was inside of you all along. And that is the story of the Zodiac. I hope you all got something from that, but I wanted to lay that down in story form so you can get a glimpse of what astrology represents from all 12 signs, and you can see what the lessons are. And, hopefully you can rewind this and listen to it. And if you have any issues in your life that's giving you trouble, you can see which one of these lessons and energies you're missing and utilize it. So with that, thanks again, DJ Shine, Sister Dubong, King and Queen Radio, Brooklyn Radio, Mr. Harrison. It was a pleasure.
Pleasure speaking.
And thank you all for listening, you early morning, late night warriors. I hope to see you soon. Peace.